My friend, some illnesses don't knock loudly at the door. They arrive quietly, so quietly that we brush them off as just getting old, probably the weather, or I'm just a little tired today. COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, is one of those illnesses. It doesn't hit like a fever. It doesn't stab like a muscle injury. It shows up as small repeating signs and slowly becomes a weight on every single breath. I want you to picture this. One morning you get out of bed and notice you have to breathe a little harder. Not full-blown shortness of breath, just a breath that feels shorter than usual. You think I probably just didn't sleep well. Another day you have a light cough in the morning. A week later, walking for 5 minutes makes you tired. And again, you say to yourself, I'm just getting older. That's normal. Have you ever tried to reassure yourself like that? One of my patients, Walter 72, once told me, James, I had no idea I was sick. I just thought I was slowing down because of age. But those normal signs were actually his lungs whispering for help, trying to warn him that they were struggling. COPD doesn't appear in a single day. It's the result of years of irritation, inflammation, and airways slowly getting clogged with mucus. What troubles me most is how many older adults only come to see me when the disease is already advanced, simply because they didn't recognize the early signals from their lungs. Today, I want to share with you the very first signs, small, subtle, but deeply important, that if recognized early, could change the course of the illness and maybe help you protect your breathing for years to come. Listen to your body, and most of all, listen to your own breath. Sign one morning, cough that won't go away, a harmless sound that may be your lungs quietly calling for help. My friend, I want you to think back to your recent mornings. Right after you wake up, even before you step out of bed, do you ever cough a few times? Maybe a dry cough, maybe a cough with a little white or pale yellow mucus. You cough lightly, no pain, no fever, no real fatigue, just a few coughs to clear your throat. Have you ever said something like, everyone coughs a little in the morning? One of my patients, Walter 72, the same man I mentioned earlier, said that exact sentence, James, I cough every morning. I thought everybody my age does. I looked at him and gently said, no, Walter, not everyone coughs. Your lungs are trying to tell you something. Morning cough is one of the earliest signs of COPD. It's not dramatic, it's not violent, but it's there every day like a saint little alarm clock. Why do you cough? Because while you sleep, mucus builds up in your airways. Healthy lungs can clear that out quickly. But when the lungs are damaged, the tiny cilia get weaker. Mucus becomes thicker, and the lungs are forced to use a cough to clean themselves. I explained it to Walter like this. Imagine your airways are like a pipe. Every night a little mud settles inside. In the morning you have to flush it out. That's what your cough is doing. Most people ignore this sign because it seems so gentle. It doesn't bother you too much. It doesn't stop you from working. It doesn't scare you. But that gentle cough is dangerous because it tricks you into thinking nothing is wrong while your lungs are slowly getting weaker. When Walter finally changed his lifestyle, reduced irritants, adjusted his diet, and followed a treatment plan, his morning cough eased significantly within a few weeks. My friend, if you cough every morning, even just a little, don't just write it off as normal. It might be your lungs sending you their first quiet cry for attention. Sign 2, getting short of breath, doing very simple tasks, a subtle but important warning most people ignore. My friend, think about a small, ordinary moment in your day. You stand up from a chair and notice you need to take a deeper breath. You walk from the living room to the kitchen and your breathing feels a bit heavier. You bend down to tie your shoes or get dressed and suddenly feel like you're missing a bit of air. Have you ever asked yourself, how can I be this tired from something so small, or brushed it off with, I'm just getting old? That's all. One of my patients, Gloria 68, once told me, James, I'm not gasping for air. It's just that even small tasks make me feel like I'm running out of breath. She said it casually, like it was no big deal, but I knew right away that's one of the first flags COPD likes to raise. You see, feeling short of breath during very light activities is one of the early signs of chronic obstructive lung disease. It's not dramatic, not the scary, choking kind of shortness of breath. It's simply this: your breath is no longer as long and full as it used to be. I explained it to Gloria like this. Imagine your lungs are two backpacks. Their job is to open up when you breathe in, But when your lungs are chronically inflamed, the bronchial walls stiffen, mucus increases, and those backpacks don't fully open anymore. So even small movements demand more work from your lungs. The frightening part is how slowly this sign develops. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly notice your breathing is shorter than yesterday. But months later, or a year later, you suddenly realize you no longer have the breath to do what once felt easy. When Gloria finally recognized this and started making changes, breathing exercises, inflammation control, gentle movement, she told me, James, I got my longer breaths back. I didn't even know I'd been living with short breaths for so long. My friend, if small tasks make you breathe shallower, don't ignore it. It's not there to frighten you. It's there to nudge you. Your lungs are asking for your attention while there's still time to help them. Sign 3, frequent wheezing, a quiet sound that's a loud warning from your airways. My friend, I want you to think about a quiet night when you're lying down to sleep. In that stillness, have you ever heard a faint sound in your chest? Like a soft whistling or a little squeak when you breathe? Not a cough, not sharp pain, just a bit of wheezing, sometimes so soft you have to lie very still to notice it. Have you ever told yourself, it's nothing, probably just the cold? Or, maybe I slept in a bad position. One of my patients, Patrick, 73, thought the same thing. He told me, James, I only wheeze a little at night. No cough, no fever, no real pain. I figured it was normal. I looked at him and gently said, Patrick, that's not normal. That's your lungs getting tired. Wheezing is a sign that your airways have narrowed and the air passing through is being forced, creating sound. It happens when mucus builds up. The bronchi are inflamed or the airway walls have lost elasticity. I gave him a simple picture. Imagine you're blowing through a small tube. If the tube is squeezed, the air makes a whistling sound. That's what's happening inside your lungs. The tricky part is that wheezing in COPD is not always as dramatic as in asthma. It can be soft, subtle, and comes and goes, especially when you lie down. The weather is cold after a heavy meal, or when you're tired. Patrick only realized how serious it was when the wheezing started appearing during the day, especially while walking. When we treated his lungs and he made changes, he later said, James, I had no idea that little sound in my chest was such a big warning. My friend, wheezing is not always frightening, but it is always important. If your breath starts making sounds, even very soft ones, that may be your lungs saying, please pay attention, I'm struggling in here. Sign 4, a heavy feeling in the chest, as if someone is gently pressing a hand against your ribs. My friend, I want you to take a moment and really listen to your body. Have you ever taken a breath, but felt like your chest just didn't open all the way? No sharp pain, no tight crushing pressure, just a quiet heaviness, hard to describe, like someone placing a gentle, invisible hand on your chest, just enough to remind you that breathing isn't as free as it used to be. Have you ever felt that? One of my patients, Irene, 70 years old, once said something I'll never forget, James. It's not that my chest hurts. I just feel like I'm wearing a wet coat. And she described it perfectly. That is exactly what it feels like. When the lungs start losing their elasticity, one of the earliest, most important signs of COPD. I explained it to her like this. Think of your lungs as 2 balloons. When they're healthy, they open easily with each breath. But when the air sacs are damaged and the lung tissue becomes stiff, those balloons just can't expand the way they used to. That's why your breath feels heavy. The tricky part is that this sign is incredibly subtle. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't make you cough. It doesn't scare you. It simply makes deep breathing uncomfortable. So slowly you begin to breathe more shallowly without even realizing it. Irene thought she was tired, stressed, maybe affected by the weather. But when we tested her lungs, we discovered her function had dropped, and that invisible hand she felt was actually her lungs trying to speak to her for the first time. After treatment and proper breathing exercises, she told me, James, my chest feels light again. I didn't know how precious that feeling was. My friend, if you ever feel your chest growing heavy, even just a little, please don't ignore it. It may be one of the earliest signs that your lungs are quietly asking for help. And the earlier you hear them, the better chance you have of preserving long, deep, peaceful breaths for years to come. Sign 5, a slow decline in stamina, when simple tasks suddenly feel harder than they used to. My friend, think about the small things you do every day. Watering a few plants, sweeping the front porch, walking to the corner of your street, climbing a short flight of stairs. Once upon a time, these things felt effortless, like breathing itself. But recently, have you found yourself tiring faster, feeling out of breath sooner, or needing to stop just to catch your breath? Have you ever wondered, why am I getting tired from something so small? One of my patients, Dennis 74, once said, "James, I don't get it. I used to walk for 20 minutes without a problem. Now 5 minutes makes me want to sit down." He assumed it was just age, but the truth ran deeper. This is one of the clearest early signs of COPD, the lungs slowly losing the ability to support the activities that once felt easy. I explained it to him like this: your lungs are like a pump. When healthy, they pump air easily as you move. But when they start to narrow, fill with mucus, or lose elasticity, every step requires more breathing energy. So the body tries to compensate. Your heart beats faster, your muscles tire sooner, your breath becomes quicker. Exhaustion shows up earlier. The hardest part is that this change happens slowly. A little less stamina today, a little less next week, and one day you realize you're not the person you used to be. After practicing proper breathing, reducing inflammation, and staying gently active, Dennis told me I didn't turn young again, James, but I got my own breath back. My friend, declining stamina is not just aging. Sometimes it's your lungs whispering, "I need support." Recognizing it early is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Sign 6: persistent fatigue, exhaustion, caused by the lungs, not by age. My friend, think about the last few days. Have you ever slept well, eaten normally, yet still felt tired? A strange draining tiredness, not pain, not illness, just a body that feels hollow, like the energy has slipped away. You sit more often. You pause between simple tasks. Your mind feels dull. Your body feels weak. Have you ever said, "I'm probably just getting old"? That's exactly what one of my patients, Marie 71, said when she walked into my office. She didn't cough much. She didn't wheeze. She was simply exhausted, like an old battery that wouldn't charge anymore. But when we tested her lungs, I knew the problem wasn't her age. It was that her lungs were weakening without her noticing. You see, when the lungs don't bring enough oxygen into the blood, the whole body is forced to run on low fuel, like a machine running without enough power. This triggers a chain reaction. The heart works harder, the muscles fatigue faster, the brain gets slightly less oxygen, tiredness spreads through the whole body. I explained it to Marie like this: think of your body as a house. When oxygen drops, the lights dim. No room works properly anymore. What makes this dangerous is that early stage COPD often shows up as fatigue long before clear symptoms like coughing or shortness of breath. And because fatigue is so common with aging, many people ignore it until they miss the chance to catch the disease early. After treatment and breathing training, Marie smiled during her follow-up and said, "James, now I understand the difference between being tired from age and being tired because my lungs were struggling." My friend, if you feel unexplained persistent fatigue, don't rush to blame age. Your lungs might be asking you to listen. Sign 7: frequent respiratory infections, when your lungs are no longer strong enough to protect themselves. My friend, I want you to think back over the past few months. Have you caught a cold that lingered for weeks? Had a mild bronchitis that came back again? Notice that weather changes hit your throat and chest harder than before. If you find yourself getting respiratory infections more often, even mild ones, it may not be weak immunity like you think. It may be your lungs warning you that they're losing their natural defenses, a very early sign of COPD. One of my patients, Henry 69, told me, "James, I've had 3 colds this year. I've never been sick this often. I thought it was because I was going out more. But when we checked, I knew his lungs had been weakening months before those infections appeared." I explained it to him simply. Healthy lungs are like a house with strong doors. When the lungs get damaged, the door doesn't close well anymore. Bacteria and viruses only need a tiny gap to get in. As the lungs lose elasticity and the tiny cilia weaken, they struggle to clear dust, mucus, and microbes. So what happens? Even a mild cold lasts longer. Bronchitis becomes more frequent. Coughing continues long after the illness ends. Recovery takes much more time. What worries me is that many people say, "That's just aging. Older people catch colds easily." But that's not the whole truth. Repeated respiratory infections are a sign that the lungs are losing strength and their defense system is no longer working the way it used to. After early treatment and lifestyle changes, Henry came back and said, "James, I didn't know those frequent colds were my lungs calling for help." Now I understand. My friend, if you're catching colds, coughs, or respiratory infections more often, especially within a few months, consider this a meaningful sign. Your lungs may be whispering, "Please notice me. I need your help." Sign 8, changes in your mucus. A clear signal most people ignore. My friend, I want you to think back to the last time you spit up a little phlegm in the morning. Did you actually look at the color, or did you just think, "That's normal at my age," and move on? A lot of older adults ignore their mucus because it doesn't hurt, doesn't cause a fever, and doesn't bother them too much. But changes in the color of your mucus are one of the most important early signs that your lungs are in trouble, especially in the early stages of COPD. One of my patients, Lorraine 73, once told me, "James, I just noticed my mucus looked a little more yellow than usual. I didn't think it was anything serious, but when I asked more questions, I found out it had been like that for months." I gently explained, "Your mucus is like a mirror that reflects what's happening inside your lungs. When the color changes, something inside has already changed too." Clear or white mucus often means a mild reaction, your lungs are still coping. Yellow or light green mucus suggests chronic inflammation or a mild infection in the airways. Thick, sticky, darker mucus signals that the airways are clogged full of excess mucus, a classic sign in COPD. What makes this dangerous is how slowly it progresses. Each day it changes just a little. The color gets a bit stronger. The mucus gets a bit thicker, and then one day you suddenly realize, "Why am I more short of breath than before?" When I asked Lorraine to watch her mucus every morning, drink more warm fluids, practice breathing, and cut back on inflammatory foods, just a few weeks later, she told me, "I never knew just watching the color of my mucus could tell me so much about my lungs." My friend, mucus is not just something to spit out and forget. It is the language of your lungs. And when its color changes, that's your lungs saying, "Something is wrong. Please pay attention to me." Sign 9, wheezing or shortness of breath. When lying down, a quiet sign your lungs can't open like they used to. My friend, I want you to think back to your recent nights. When you lie down to sleep, do you ever feel like breathing gets harder? Like your breath gets stuck halfway? Do you find it easier to breathe on your side, but when you lie flat on your back, your chest feels heavier and your breathing becomes shallow? Have you ever asked yourself, "Why do I get short of breath just from lying down?" One of my patients, Raymond 70, told me with worry in his voice, "James, I feel fine during the day, but as soon as I lie down at night, I have to breathe harder. I thought it was my heart." But when we checked his lungs, I knew right away this was an early sign of COPD. You see, when you lie down, the weight of the organs in your chest and belly shifts and puts more pressure on the lungs. Healthy lungs are flexible. They can expand easily, whether you're standing, sitting, or lying down. But when the lungs are chronically inflamed, filled with more mucus, and have lost some elasticity, they don't open fully. The airways narrow more easily. The diaphragm doesn't support breathing as well when you're flat. The result, your breathing becomes heavier, shallower, and sometimes you hear a faint wheeze, especially at night. I once explained it to Raymond like this. Think of your lungs as two doors. When you're standing, they swing open easily. But when you lie down, a little extra weight presses on them, and if the hinges are weak, those doors can't open all the way. The scary part is that many people think that shortness of breath when lying down is only related to the heart. But early COPD can do the very same thing quietly, slowly, and very easy to overlook. After learning proper breathing exercises, reducing inflammation, and taking better care of his airways, Raymond came back and told me, "James, now I can lie down and still take a deep breath. I never realized my lungs were so sensitive." My friend, if you notice that breathing gets harder when you lie down, even just a little treat that is a gentle but serious warning from your lungs, please pay attention before breathing becomes truly difficult. Sign 10, unexplained weight loss, when overworked lungs quietly burn up your energy. My friend, I want you to think about your weight over the past few months. Have you ever stepped on the scale and wondered, "Why am I losing weight? I'm not dieting. I'm not exercising more." A little weight loss now and then is not always scary, but unexplained weight loss, especially after age 60, can be an early sign of COPD and one that many people miss. One of my patients, Judith 69, told me, "Puzzle James, I've lost 3 kilos in 2 months. I didn't mean to. I'm eating the same as always." When I asked more about her breathing, she admitted she was getting out of breath easier and tiring more quickly, but she thought that was just age. I gently explained, When your lungs get weaker, your body has to use more energy just to breathe. You don't notice it, but your body is quietly burning through its reserves. You see, in early COPD, people don't always feel dramatically short of breath, but their bodies still work harder behind the scenes to bring in enough oxygen. This creates a quiet spiral. Breathing harder burns more calories. Muscles weaken, breathing becomes even harder. Breathing gets harder. The body burns even more energy. The weight loss doesn't happen because you're eating less. It happens because your breathing is using up energy just to keep you going. I told Judith, you're not losing weight because of your diet. You're losing weight because your lungs are fighting harder than you realize. After treatment and proper breathing exercises, her weight stabilized. At her follow-up, she smiled and said, I didn't know my weight was trying to tell me something. I just wasn't listening. My friend, unexplained weight loss is not always dangerous. But in many cases, it's your body quietly telling you your breathing is getting tired. Please pay attention. Catching this early is the first step in protecting your lungs and your strength for the years ahead. Sign 11, shortness of breath when the weather changes, when your lungs become too sensitive to your surroundings. My friend, think back to recent changes in the weather. On a cold day, did your breathing feel heavier? On a damp, humid day, did it feel harder to take a deep breath? Did a cool morning breeze ever make you breathe faster, like your lungs were being gently squeezed? If that sounds familiar, it may not just be getting older. It may be an early sign of COPD. One of my patients, Jeffrey 72, once told me, James, I've grown to hate the cold. Every time a cold wind hits me, I feel like I can't get enough air. But when it's too hot, I struggle too. I don't understand why I've become so sensitive. He thought it was simply because he was aging. But in reality, his lungs were reacting too strongly to environmental changes. I explained it like this. When your lungs are healthy, your airways are like flexible tubes. Hot or cold day can adjust. But when your lungs are damaged from chronic inflammation, mucus, or loss of elasticity, those tubes become stiff and narrow. A bit of cold air is enough to make them clamp down. In early COPD, people might not cough much yet. They may not wheeze loudly, but they begin to notice more shortness of breath in cold weather, breathing faster in humid air, chest tightness when the air is too dry, getting winded more easily in the early morning or late evening, and they often say that's just old age. Everyone's lungs get weaker, but that's not the full story. These are signs that the lungs are losing their ability to adjust and regulate themselves. After learning proper breathing techniques and protecting himself from cold air, Jeffrey's breathing became much more stable. He said something I'll never forget, James. It wasn't the weather that was draining me. It was my lungs that had been tired for a long time. My friend, if you feel unusually sensitive to the weather, this is not something to ignore. It's your lungs sending a very clear message. Please take care of me before breathing becomes much harder. Sign 12. The feeling that you can't quite fill your lungs, as if your breath stops halfway. My friend, I want you to pay attention to your breathing over the last few days. Have you ever tried to take a deep breath, but felt like you just couldn't get all the way there? No pain, no cough, just a feeling that your breath hits a ceiling as if something invisible stops it halfway. You can still breathe. You're not choking, but every breath feels incomplete. Have you ever felt that? One of my patients, Eleanor, 70, once told me with quiet worry, James, I can still breathe, but it feels like my lungs never fully open, like I'm living on only half a breath. She put into words a feeling I've heard many times from people in the early stages of COPD. I explained it with a simple image. Think of your lungs as two sails. When they're healthy, the wind can fill them completely. But when the sails are slightly torn or the ropes are stuck, no matter how strong the wind is, they just don't open all the way. In early COPD, the airways narrow just a bit, the air sacs lose some elasticity, mucus partially blocks the airflow. Together, these make it impossible for the breath to reach the deepest parts of the lungs like it used to. The sad thing is many people blame this feeling on stress, being tired, not sleeping well, but really their lungs are telling them, I can't open fully anymore. After doing diaphragm breathing and reducing inflammation, Eleanor came back and said, James, now when I breathe in, it feels like the air goes all the way through. It's no longer being stopped halfway. My friend, that feeling of not being able to take a full breath, even if it's mild, is not just a normal part of aging. It is a subtle but very important signal that your lungs are starting to lose their flexibility. And when you notice it early, you give yourself a real chance to restore deeper, warmer, more peaceful breaths in the years ahead. A gentle message about COPD and your future breaths. My friend, once we pass 60, breathing is no longer something we can take for granted, like we did in our 20s or 30s. It becomes a quiet companion, sometimes tired, sometimes weak, sometimes trying to whisper to us through small signs we brush aside. COPD does not arrive in one day. It doesn't knock loudly on your door. It arrives through those morning coughs you call normal, those shortened breaths you blame on age, those nights you can't lie flat comfortably, those strange lingering bouts of fatigue or frequent colds, and slowly, bit by bit, it builds a circle around your life. But here's the hopeful part. Your body always sends signals before it's too late, and you've already done the most important thing: you're paying attention. I've seen many patients regain deeper breaths, better sleep, and lighter mornings simply because they noticed the early signs and acted in time. They didn't have to change everything overnight. They just needed a little awareness, a few gentle adjustments, and a bit more kindness toward their own bodies. Breath is how your lungs speak to you every day. When it becomes rushed, it's asking for help. When it turns shallow, it's struggling. And when you care for it, it rewards you with more years of strength and peace. My friend, listen to your lungs. Protect them while they're still whispering, so you won't have to face the days when every breath becomes a battle.